your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us. Premier Danielle Smith released a report that could lead to a vote on whether Alberta should ditch the Canada Pension Plan. The wheels for this were put in motion in 2019 when Jason Kenney first introduced the idea through his Fair Deal panel. The report released from LifeWorks suggests an Alberta pension plan could allegedly save Albertans billions of dollars annually.
According to their analysis, an Alberta pension plan could increase benefits for seniors, reduce premiums for workers, and protect the pension interests and benefits of all Albertans. The LifeWorks analysis estimates that Albertans could save more than $5 billion in the first year alone if we moved from the CPP to an Alberta pension plan. That's because hardworking Albertans have paid much more into the CPP than Alberta's seniors get back in pension benefits. What does $5 billion in savings mean for Albertans? Well, there are a few potential scenarios. $5 billion could mean more money for seniors who could see larger monthly pension benefits. Seniors might even receive a $5,000 to $10,000 bonus payment when they retire.
Alberta Finance Minister Nate Horner says the only way the province would even consider moving forward with an Alberta pension plan is if Albertans voted for it in a referendum.
I want to stress that an APP would have to guarantee your benefits. The Canada Pension Plan Act dictates that in order to qualify for withdrawal from the CPP, a provincial plan must provide at least the same level of benefits to its citizens as the CPP. We wouldn't move forward with an Alberta pension plan unless it benefited every Albertan and brought long-term security that Albertans need and deserve. And we wouldn't move forward without your explicit approval.
Now, in the report, the province cited that it's entitled to $334 billion of the Canada Pension Plan, which is over half of its assets. There are many, however, who say this is a flawed estimate and are critical that Smith did not campaign on this during the provincial elections. Shannon Phillips, Alberta's NDP finance critic for insurance and pensions, says these numbers are, quote, complete make-believe.
The report will rely on a withdrawal formula that dates back to 1966 and completely ignores how the Canada Pension Plan is currently invested. It will claim, erroneously, falsely, that Alberta is owed hundreds of billions of dollars from the fund. This is complete make-believe, because if every province claimed their quote-unquote share of the fund as calculated by this coming report, it would total 9 times what is currently stored in the CPP.
There were also drawbacks and risks involved in a provincial pension plan, according to University of Lethbridge political science professor Lars Holstrom.
If you were to just ask people on the street, if you were to see your CPP contributions decline, but with the same benefits or maybe an increase, oh, that sounds fantastic. But let's also remember that claiming this money into a provincial plan would include, of course, having to invest that, having to manage those funds. How those funds would be used may introduce risk. And, to be honest, Alberta has a history of economic volatility. So if it's invested in Alberta, which would make sense at some level, you may be actually opening up that fund to a higher risk exposure than some people care for. Most people want to see their pensions, the return may be low, but they want guaranteed and certainty about their incomes in the future.
Hallstrom also says one of the benefits of a national pension plan is having the flexibility of where you move, live, and work in the country while contributing to a single plan. In other news, a class action lawsuit on behalf of 700 unvaccinated Canadians is being launched in federal court. Alberta lawyer Leighton Gray, who is spearheading the campaign, says there are 3 different elements to this lawsuit.
There's different classes, 3 different classes of plaintiffs. If people want to join the lawsuit, one is called the employment subclass. This applies to people who lost their jobs because of vaccine mandates due to government interference. There's also a travel subclass. So this is for people who couldn't travel for work or to see loved ones or even for vacations. And then there's a third class. It's called the dual impact class, and that's for people who fall into both of the previous categories. Depending on the number of people who join the class, this case could involve, tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars or more, depending on who ends up joining.
Gray says those who are interested in joining this class action suit are invited to contact his firm through their website at gwsllp.ca. After the break, a look at the protest that stirred up controversy across the nation this week. We'll be right back.
So the policy and procedures that we do not agree with and do not want in schools is SOGI, which is the sexual orientation and gender identity ideology.
Well, this past week, people from coast to coast in both Canada and the U.S. came out to join the 1 Million March for Children. The rallies were held Wednesday in protest of SOGI, which is the sexual orientation and gender identity education tool being used in elementary schools. The rallies were also met with opposition from allies of the TUS LGBTQ+ community. Here in southern Alberta, hundreds from both sides gathered outside Lethbridge City Hall to make their voices heard. I had the opportunity to be on the ground there to file this report. Trans lives matter. Trans lives matter. They were carrying signs, waving flags, using megaphones, and shouting chants. Both sides present, both sides passionate. Coordinators of the 1 Million March for Children in Lethbridge organizing a 9 a.m. school walkout to meet at City Hall at 10 a.m. Then at 11 a.m. take the short 5 to 10 minute walk to the Lethbridge School District office and then back again to City Hall.
So the policy and procedures that we do not agree with and do not want in schools is SOGI, which is the sexual orientation and gender identity ideology. And what that does is it teaches kids from kindergarten, from a very small age, where they're not developed mentally to even understand or comprehend what is being taught to them. It confuses them. They should not be receiving sexual education in elementary school.
Shell Landry is one of the organizers of the march in Lethbridge, who says in addition, she's strongly against parents not being informed about what their kids are learning at school or if they've changed their identity. But many on the opposing side, those who are allies of the TUS LGBTQ+ community, say school might be the child's only safe space if they have parents who are unsupportive.
There wasn't a lot of support just at home in general. But going to school, there were teachers there who were able to make sense of my emotions. I had friends who would help me figure things out. I didn't feel alone. I often found when I came back home, I felt more lonely, wishing that I could just go back to school to see my friends.
I got beat up, bullied. I got called every name in the book. I was called slurs a lot. And being that person that youth can look up to, and they can hopefully look at all of us and go, I can speak up too. No matter where I come from, no matter what I do, I can speak up.
This mom, who wishes not to be identified, says she feels the message of today's march is getting lost.
Our group has nothing against LGBTQ+. We are not against any child. We just want our rights protected as well as their rights protected. And so why can't we create a safe, inclusive space for all kids?
At the end of the day, it appears both sides want the same thing, to protect kids, but just in very different ways. For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Roche. And it seems that there is some misinformation on both sides of the issue. Jason Schilling is the president of the Alberta Teachers Association. He tells us parents who protest sexual orientation and gender identity in schools need to understand that SOGI is not actually part of the Alberta school curriculum.
SOGI is not curriculum. Curriculum is created by government for teachers to teach in school. SOGI is not curriculum. It is a resource. It is a way for teachers to create inclusivity within their classroom so that every student feels safe. People who are protesting against SOGI, I'm not sure if they understand the difference between SOGI and curriculum. And that is really a big issue, I think, that needs to be clarified here, because the Alberta Teachers Association doesn't write curriculum. We give input on curriculum when we are asked to, but we don't write curriculum.
We asked Schilling what the schools would say to parents who ask that this tool not be used until later grades like junior high or even high school.
It's interesting because the Education Act gives parents rights. and they have the right to have their students not take part of instruction if they don't want to. They've always had that right. They've always had that voice. So I don't understand actually what SOGI, this anti-SOGI argument is all about. What I'm seeing is a lot of hatred, transphobia, and homophobia directed to a marginalized community, the 2S LGBTQ plus community. I'm seeing a lot of signs, I'm seeing a lot of rhetoric that is opposing a marginalized group. We know that students who identify as 2S LGBTQ plus are at higher risk for suicide. They don't feel safe at school at times, and we need to ensure that they do.
Up next, he's been a controversial public figure who's received his court sentence this week. But what does his outspoken son have to say about it? We speak with Nathaniel Pulaski after the break. The name Arthur Pulaski has been in the news quite a bit over the past few years. He's the Calgary street preacher who was found guilty of mischief and breaching a release order for his role in the protest against COVID-19 public health measures. Well, hundreds of supporters gathered at the Lethbridge courthouse Monday as the controversial pastor had his sentence handed to him. Pulaski received only 60 days plus time served for his role in the Coutts border blockade. The judge, however, gave Pulaski 60 days credit for time already served. The Crown was asking for a sentence of 8 to 10 months. Video journalist Micah Quinn was there and has the details.
The street preacher played to the crowd following his hearing and spoke with members of the Lethbridge media.
I always said to the government officials, leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Let me do what I'm good at, which is feeding the poor, preaching the gospel, and just being a church. You don't have to come and listen to me. However, let me do my job. And that's what I did in the past 3 years. I did my job. I am a shepherd. I stood by hurting people. I did my best. You don't have to like it.
Back in May, Pulaski was found guilty of mischief and breaching a release order for his role in the Coutts border blockade in early 2022. Prosecutors said to the court that Pulaski's speech at the border convinced the protesters to stay longer and to, quote, hold the line. Pulaski told us that he will now appeal the guilty verdict.
The sentencing actually was quite reasonable. The judge was very thoughtful. He put, the precedents before us, and I think he came to the right conclusion if I was, in fact, guilty of a crime. However, like I said, I should never be arrested. I should never be charged with an offense. I was there in the capacity of a pastor.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Now, Pulaski's son Nathaniel has also been quite vocal regarding the former mandates and defending his father, even appearing in front of the EU Parliament to plead for help. He says the family was pleasantly surprised that Arthur received a lighter than expected sentence. Here is part of his interview with BCN's Naveen Day.
Your father was given a suspended sentence and walked out of the Lethbridge courthouse a free man after his sentencing hearing. Was this the outcome that you were hoping for?
Well, yes, it is actually. We were expecting a much heftier sentence just because I believe this is a politicized trial. This is nothing based on law and order. Our lawyers are baffled that there was even a conviction. Nobody in the history of Canada has ever been found guilty of inciting mischief, which is essentially a speech crime. It's a thought crime, kind of like what hate speech would entail, where saying words that the government disagrees with can actually land you in prison, right? Because who decides what speech is legal? Well, that hands to the government, right? That would be handed down to the government to decide that. And what he did was he gave a 19-minute speech telling truckers to continue holding the line, to continue standing for the rights and freedoms, and that essentially warranted him being arrested and spending 50 days in solitary confinement, which counts as 78 days time served. So when he was handed down a 60-day sentence, he was given time served, so no extra prison.
Back in July, you were invited to address the EU Parliament in Brussels on behalf of your father. So tell us more about what you told them and what the response was, because I heard your speech ended in an eruption of applause.
Yeah, so I was invited actually to come speak about kind of the consequences of having the World Health Organization, the WEF, influencing sovereign nations' policies, right? So the WHO has a heavy hand to play in European Parliament and actually influencing policies. So they invited me to come speak about the consequences of that, one of which being the extremes, like the case of my father, where his church was raided, court orders, summons. He was arrested for keeping his church open, defying health orders. And that's kind of the extreme of what happens when you let this quote unquote health tyranny to happen. Because there was a bunch of members of European Parliament that were hosting this event. They were completely on board. They very, very sympathetic to the story, to the cause of what Canada is going through. And there was a standing ovation, huge reception. They were very, very receptive to the message. They loved the speech. I got to speak, and then right after me, my dad got to speak via video. And after our 8-minute presentation, the crowd erupted, and it was a huge, huge positive reception.
After the break, we speak with an MP who puts our financial hard times directly on the shoulders of the man leading the country. Keep it right here. Canadians are still having a difficult time with inflation and the high cost of living, according to Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas, who says Canadians simply can't get ahead and are hurting financially because of poor decision-making by the Trudeau government. Here she is with BCN's Hal Roberts.
Rachel, your leader, Pierre Poilievre, says part of the issue right now is the federal carbon tax, which continues to hit many Canadians very hard, including our truckers and our farmers.
Yeah, for sure. We know that this is a problem. The Liberals have been hell-bent on applying a carbon tax to the Canadian population, and they've said that this is somehow going to save the planet. But in fact, we don't actually see evidence of that. What we do see evidence of, however, is that costs are skyrocketing. We know that grocery costs went up by close to 7% just within 1 month. We know that people are having to spend several $100s just for a couple bags of groceries. I'm hearing story after story come, into my office, either through email or phone call, or people coming in person to tell me about the difficult time that they're having just to make ends meet. And so we know that affordability is a big issue that Canadians are facing. Certainly, those in Lethbridge are no exception. Canadians are finding it very difficult. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that the carbon tax is applied to the farmer, and then it's applied to transport, and then it's applied to the grocery store, and then it's applied to transport again, and so on and so forth. And so by the time, that carbon tax has accumulated over and over and over again, and it gets to the consumer, they're having to bear the brunt of that. And they just can't do it anymore.
Now, your leader, Pierre Poilievre, says he also has a plan to make housing more affordable. The average house price in Canada right now is hovering around $700,000. Rachel, how can a young married couple even afford to save up for a home like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of young people are feeling quite hopeless. In fact, we know that 9 out of 10 young people have actually lost the dream of homeownership. Not because it's something that they don't desire anymore, but rather because they just don't see opportunity. They crunch the numbers and they don't see how it could possibly work. We know that, the cost of owning a home has doubled under this government. Whether it's rent or mortgages or saving for a down payment, people are finding that extremely challenging. It didn't have to be this way. This is largely the impact of inflationary spending brought on by the Liberal government. And it has driven the cost of everything, including, of course, housing. At the end of the day, as Conservatives, we have a plan to restore Canadians to their rightful place where they can afford the basic dignity of homeownership, where they can do so in a safe neighborhood, because ultimately they're bringing home powerful paychecks that can pay for that. So that's our plan going forward, and we'll definitely be committing to that and delivering on that for Canadians.
Now, you've witnessed firsthand people who've actually lost their homes and are now living in their vehicles?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's very sad. I've had a number of stories come into my office, individuals who have popped by to tell me just the circumstances that they're facing. I had one couple, tell me their story. They had to let go of their home because they couldn't afford their rent anymore, and so they were living in an RV. I had another couple come in and they said that they had to, ultimately, their home was foreclosed on, and they ended up living in their vehicle. I've had plenty of others who have said, they're not able to make their rental payments and they're concerned about, being evicted. Others who are not able to make their mortgage payments, they're having to sell and downsize. These are the types of stories that are coming into my office on a daily basis. And so it makes me very concerned for the constituents that I serve here in Lethbridge, and of course, wanting to make sure that their future looks better.
So if the writ actually did drop today and you had to hit the campaign trail here in Lethbridge, what would you really be campaigning on?
Certainly our leader has spent the entire summer traveling across the country, and he attended over 150 events and talked to tens of thousands of Canadians during that time. And the big issues that came back to him, number one would be affordability and people having a really hard time just making ends meet. The next issue that we are hearing over and over and over again has to do with crime and safe streets. Another issue, which is top of mind for Canadians, of course, is housing. Young people want to be able to dream about and plan for owning a home. Right now, they can't do that, and that's because of the current Liberal government's policies. And then the last issue that we're hearing coming up over and over again has to do with just freedom of speech, freedom of belief, freedom of freedom of mobility, etc. Those basic Canadian freedoms, those fundamentals that are committed to us as citizens. And so people are concerned that those are under attack and certainly wanting that to be restored.
If you wish to see the full interview with Rachel Thomas, head on over to our website, bridgecitynews.ca. The website is at the bottom of your screen, or you can scan this QR code to get our homepage. We'll be right back with a look at sports from Southern Alberta. Welcome back. If you're in the mood for a movie this weekend, why not make it a free one? In recognition of National Truth and Reconciliation Week, which kicks off September 25th, the Movie Mill will be showing free viewings of Bones of Crow, which is a psychological drama told through the eyes of Cree matriarch Aileen Spears. She's a residential school survivor who continues her family's generational fight in the face of systemic starvation, racism, and sexual abuse. Len Binning of the Movie Mill explains how the movie became to be offered pro bono.
The City and Reconciliation Committee approached us, and along with a few other partners, we happily jumped on board. And starting this Friday and running until next Thursday, the film will actually show free of charge each day from 12:30 and 6:30 p.m. Advanced tickets are probably recommended. We think this will be popular as the price is right for everybody. Oddly enough, we did play this film on release back in June, and it was very popular at the time. So this is sort of a second go around. So if you didn't see it or you have interest in seeing it, definitely recommend it.
The Fort Macleod Curling Club will be celebrating its 125th anniversary from October 27th through 28th. The organization will be hosting a huge event coming up to observe the historic milestone. BCN's Micah Quinn has the details.
There is a long list of items on the agenda for the Fort Macleod Curling Club's 125th anniversary event. Staff with the organization said there will be an amazing opportunity through the online auction for participants to test their skills against some of the best curlers from across Canada.
But when you go on there, you can click onto the online Curl with Rockstars. So the top 3 bids will have the right to curl with Shannon Kleibrink, and the top 3 bids that have the bids for Casey Scheidegger will get to curl with her.
The club has a long and storied history in Fort Macleod, dating back to 1898.
Actually, we're pretty rich in heritage. There's a lot of really good history behind the club. In 1905, the first ever provincials was actually hosted in Calgary. Fort Macleod sent a team of 4 men, and they won provincials. So that was a big thing for our club. When I said there was third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation of families that have been curling in the club. I think that's a testament to the club.
The proceeds from the historic event will go towards supporting the Chinook Regional Hospital's neonatal unit. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Well, pickleball enthusiasts gathered Wednesday morning for the unveiling of 6 new courts that opened in North Lethbridge. The courts, which are directly adjacent to the old ones, offer brand new features for players. Officials say this project has been a long time coming. BCN's Angela Stewart has more.
It's considered the fastest growing sport in North America, and now more people will have room to play pickleball in Lethbridge. 6 brand new dedicated courts officially opened in Legacy Park, with dignitaries serving up the ball for the unveiling.
Now, of course, this isn't the end for pickleball. This is my own personal perspective. I think pickleball is growing more and more in this community, and we as a council and as a corporation have to strive to find new locations, because I can't see this sport ever really coming to an end. It's only going to grow more and more.
The new facility is part of the city's 2022-2031 capital improvement plan, with funding for the project at over $600,000. The courts, which are located next to the original 6, have plexi-pave coating on the ground and windscreens to help with better play.
The surface itself is a painted surface that has some sand in it, so it offers the ability for the ball to bounce true. With Lethbridge, we have usually 30 to 40 K winds. And if you don't have windscreens like we have here, it's almost impossible to play.
General Manager of Recreation and Culture for the City of Lethbridge, Robin Harper, says this has been a multi-year project as far as planning.
Trying to get it within budget, and then obviously today is the culmination of that to have the official opening. We're excited about it. The club is extremely excited about it. And it just speaks to the popularity of the sport right now.
Harper suspects many people will be utilizing the space as the sport of pickleball continues to grow.
I think with the trend we're seeing with the popularity of it and the growth of it, I can foresee us looking at building more courts throughout the city in the future.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Up next, a Fort Macleod town councillor who was charged during the Coutts border blockade last year is speaking out in support of the Coutts 4 who have been in jail and have not received bail for a year and a half. Marco van Hugenbos says it appears as though the 4 are being held as political prisoners. Watch the full interview after the break.